The phone rang at 2 in the morning, shattering the quiet of the Brooklyn apartment like a thunderclap. "Leo, listen to me carefully." His mother's voice cut through the line, sharp and unyielding. "I forbid you from ever seeing your grandmother again. If she finds out you're gay, it will destroy her, and I won't let you be the one to do that." Leo sat up in bed, his heart pounding, Xavier stirring beside him with a sleepy groan. The city lights from the window painted soft patterns across the sheets, but nothing could soften the blow of those words. He gripped the phone tighter, his knuckles whitening. "Mom, what are you talking about? Grandma's been asking for me for weeks. She's sick. I can't just disappear." His voice cracked despite his effort to stay steady. Xavier's hand found his under the covers, warm and steady, the only thing keeping Leo from spiraling right there. On the other end, his mother sighed heavily, the sound full of years of disappointment. "This isn't up for discussion, Leo. Your father and I have talked about it. Your lifestyle, it doesn't belong in her world. She's old-fashioned, from a different time. One visit and she'll know, and it'll break her heart in her final months." The line went dead before Leo could argue. He dropped the phone onto the nightstand, staring at the ceiling as if it held answers. Xavier propped himself up on one elbow, his brown eyes searching Leo's face in the dim glow. "Babe, talk to me. What did she say?" Leo recounted every word, his chest tight with the familiar mix of anger and shame that had followed him since he came out at 22. They had built a life here in New York together, far from the quiet suburbs of Chicago where his family still clung to Sunday potlucks and unspoken rules. Leo worked as a graphic designer at a midtown agency, crafting campaigns that sold dreams to strangers while hiding pieces of his own. Xavier taught art at a community studio, his hands always stained with paint, creating pieces that captured the raw beauty of the city they both loved. Their apartment was small but theirs, filled with mismatched furniture from flea markets and walls covered in Xavier's vibrant cityscapes. Tonight, though, the space felt suffocating. Leo swung his legs over the edge of the bed and walked to the window, looking out at the Brooklyn Bridge twinkling in the distance. "She acts like I'm choosing this to hurt her, like loving you is some kind of rebellion." Xavier came up behind him, wrapping strong arms around his waist and resting his chin on Leo's shoulder. "You're not choosing anything except to be honest. We've talked about this. Your mom will come around someday." But even as he said it, doubt lingered in Xavier's tone. They both knew the truth. Some wounds ran too deep for simple hope. The rest of the night blurred into restless talk. Leo shared memories of summers at Grandma Evelyn's old farmhouse outside Chicago, where she had taught him to skip stones across the pond and listened without judgment to his childhood dreams of becoming an artist himself. She was the one who had slipped him extra cookies when his parents weren't looking, the one who called every birthday without fail. Now, at 83 and fighting cancer, she was slipping away, and his mother wanted to erase him from her final chapters. "I can't stay away," Leo whispered finally. "Not like this." By morning, the decision felt inevitable. Leo booked a flight for the weekend, telling no one except Xavier. At the airport gate, Xavier pulled him into a tight hug, the kind that said everything words couldn't. "Face them your way. I'll be right here when you get back." Their kiss was quick but full of promise, the kind that reminded Leo why he had fought so hard for this life. The flight was short, but every mile brought heavier thoughts. When he pulled up to the family home in his rental car, the familiar brick house with its perfectly trimmed lawn looked smaller than he remembered. His mother opened the door before he could knock, her face a mask of controlled fury. "Leo, I told you not to come." But from inside, Grandma Evelyn's voice called out weakly, "Is that my Leo? Don't keep him waiting on the porch, dear." The reunion in the living room was everything and nothing Leo expected. Grandma sat in her favorite armchair, thinner than before but with the same sharp sparkle in her eyes. She hugged him fiercely despite the tubes in her arm. "You've grown even more handsome, sweetheart. Tell me about that big city of yours." They talked for hours over weak tea and store-bought cookies, skirting the edges of real conversation. Leo mentioned his job, the friends he had made, but left Xavier out entirely. His mother hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, her silence louder than any shout. Later that evening, alone in the guest room that still smelled of mothballs and childhood, Leo texted Xavier, "She's the same. I feel like a kid again, hiding pieces of myself." The reply came instantly, "You don't have to hide forever. I love you exactly as you are." The next day brought the first crack in the facade. While helping Grandma water her rose bushes in the backyard, she suddenly paused, her gloved hand resting on his arm. "So, when are you going to bring that special young man home? Xavier, right? He sounds wonderful from what you've told me in your letters." Leo froze, the hose slipping from his fingers. How could she know? He had never mentioned the name in calls home. Grandma smiled softly, her eyes kind. "A grandmother notices things. The way you light up when you talk about New York. The way you avoid certain questions. I approve if he makes you happy." Before Leo could respond, his mother burst through the screen door. "Mother, that's enough." Leo inside. "Now." The argument that followed in the kitchen was swift and brutal. Voices rose, accusations flew. "You're poisoning her last days with this nonsense," his mother hissed. Leo stood taller than he ever had in that house. "This isn't nonsense, Mom. This is my life. And Grandma deserves the truth from me." The words hung in the air like smoke, changing everything in ways he couldn't yet see. Little did Leo know, the real storm was only beginning. That argument in the kitchen lingered like a bruise, tender and impossible to ignore. Leo left Chicago the next morning with a heavy heart, promising Grandma he would call every day. The flight back to New York felt longer this time, each mile stretching the distance between the boy he used to be and the man he was fighting to become. When he walked through the apartment door, Xavier was waiting with takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine. No questions asked until Leo was ready. They ate in comfortable silence at first, the city hum filtering through the open window like background music to their story. Later, curled on the couch with Xavier's head in his lap, Leo finally spoke. "She knew, Xavier. Grandma knew about us without me saying a word." Xavier looked up, surprise mixing with pride. "That's huge. Maybe your family's not as closed off as you think." But Leo shook his head, replaying his mother's face. "Mom overheard everything. She looked at me like I was a stranger." Their conversation stretched late into the night, hands intertwined, voices low. Xavier shared his own coming-out story from California, how his parents had eventually hugged him at graduation and asked when they could meet his first boyfriend. "Not every family gets there overnight," he said gently. "But you took a step. That's what matters." Work the following week offered little distraction. At the agency, Leo stared at campaign mock-ups for a new coffee brand, colors blurring as his mind wandered back to the farmhouse roses and Grandma's knowing smile. Xavier noticed the distance during their evening studio visits, where Leo would watch him paint in silence. One night, after a particularly tense call with his sister Mia, Leo snapped. "She says I'm selfish for even thinking about telling Grandma the full truth before it's too late." Xavier set down his brush, paint smudged on his cheek. "You're not selfish. You're human. And if your mom keeps pushing, maybe it's time we visit together next time." The idea took root slowly. They spent weekends planning, not just a trip but a quiet stand for their love. Leo showed Xavier old photos on his phone. Grandma at his high school graduation, smiling despite the tension in the room that day. Xavier listened, sketching Leo's expressions as he talked, capturing the vulnerability in charcoal lines. Their relationship had always been the steady heartbeat of Leo's new life. They had met in a packed NYU lecture hall 5 years earlier, Leo fumbling with notes and Xavier offering a spare pen with a grin that lit up the room. What started as study sessions turned into late walks through Washington Square Park, confessions under streetlights, and eventually a shared lease on the Brooklyn apartment. But family shadows had always loomed. Leo's father had barely spoken to him since the coming-out dinner that ended with slammed doors and tears. His mother sent holiday cards with generic messages, never mentioning Xavier. Now, with Grandma's health updates growing grimmer each week, the pressure mounted. Leo found himself canceling plans with friends, avoiding the gym, replaying arguments in his head. Xavier remained patient, cooking his favorite meals and leaving little notes on the fridge. "You're enough. Always." Then the call came on a rainy Tuesday. Grandma Evelyn had taken a turn for the worse. Doctors gave her weeks, maybe less. Leo's mother sounded exhausted on the phone. "She's asking for you again. But Leo, please. Keep it simple." He hung up and looked at Xavier across the kitchen table. "I need you there this time. I can't do the will reading alone." Xavier nodded without hesitation. "Pack light. We're driving. Road trip, just us." The decision felt right, like the first real breath Leo had taken in months. The drive from New York to Chicago stretched over 2 days, filled with playlists of their favorite indie bands and stops at roadside diners. They talked about everything and nothing. Dreams of buying a small house upstate someday, Xavier's latest gallery show, Leo's fear that he might never fully bridge the gap with his family. At a motel outside Cleveland, they lay awake listening to rain on the roof. "Whatever happens at the reading," Xavier said, tracing patterns on Leo's arm, "we leave together, stronger." Leo kissed him deeply, gratitude swelling in his chest. This man had seen every fractured piece of him and chosen to stay. They arrived in Chicago the morning of the will reading, the family home already filled with relatives Leo hadn't seen in years. Aunt Carla hugged him stiffly. Uncle Mark avoided eye contact. His sister Mia pulled him aside in the hallway. "Mom's on edge. Dad too. Just don't rock the boat today." But Leo felt Xavier's hand on his lower back, steadying him. The living room smelled of lilies and old wood, chairs arranged in a circle around the lawyer's table. Grandma's empty armchair sat like a silent witness. The lawyer, a kind-eyed woman named Ms. Rivera, cleared her throat and began. Standard phrases about assets and wishes filled the air until she reached the final pages. "To my grandson Leo, I leave the majority of my estate, including the farmhouse and its contents, with one condition." Gasps rippled through the room. Leo's mother went pale. Ms. Rivera continued, reading from the handwritten letter attached. "Leo, my dear boy, I have known the truth about your heart for years. I saw it in your eyes every summer. Love is love, and I want you to live it fully. Xavier, if you're reading this with him, welcome to the family. The rest of you, it's time to face what we've ignored for too long." The room erupted. His mother stood abruptly, knocking over a chair. "This is insane. She wasn't in her right mind." His father muttered curses under his breath. Mia stared at Leo, betrayal flashing in her eyes. But Leo felt something shift inside him, a door opening after years of being locked. Xavier squeezed his hand under the table, their fingers laced tight. The will had done more than divide property. It had forced every hidden truth into the light. And as accusations flew, Leo realized the real battle was only beginning. Chaos swallowed the living room in seconds. Aunt Carla clutched her pearls. Uncle Mark paced like a caged animal. And Leo's father slammed his fist on the table hard enough to rattle the water glasses. "This is your fault," he growled at Leo, eyes narrowed with decades of unspoken resentment. "Filling her head with your ideas before she passed." Leo sat frozen, the weight of the letter still echoing in his ears. Grandma's words had been a quiet revolution, written in shaky handwriting but clear as daylight. She had known, accepted, and chosen him anyway. Xavier remained the calm center, his thumb tracing slow circles on Leo's palm beneath the table. When the lawyer tried to restore order, Leo's mother turned on her. She must have been confused. Cancer affects the mind. We need a second opinion. Ms. Rivera shook her head politely. The will is ironclad, Mrs. Harlan. Signed and witnessed months ago when your mother was still fully competent. The revelation landed like another bomb. Grandma had planned this. She had seen the cracks in the family long before Leo did and built a bridge with ink and intention. Mia cornered Leo in the kitchen later, her voice low and urgent. How could you do this? She was dying and you let her think it was okay. Leo met her gaze without flinching. I didn't tell her anything, Mia. She already knew. And she loved me more because of it. The misunderstanding cut deep. His sister had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over holidays with forced smiles. Now betrayal twisted her features. You've always been selfish. Moving away, living your life like the rest of us don't exist. Xavier stepped in then, his tone even. This isn't about selfishness. It's about honesty. Leo's not asking you to change. He's just asking you to see him. The afternoon dissolved into tense negotiations over the farmhouse. Leo offered to divide the assets fairly, but his mother refused to discuss details while that man was in the room. Xavier waited outside on the porch, sketching the old oak tree in his notebook to give the family space. Leo joined him eventually, the screen door creaking behind him. They're tearing each other apart in there, over money and pride. Xavier closed the sketchbook. And over you. But Grandma gave you the power to choose how this ends. They sat in silence, watching clouds gather, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. That evening, back at the motel on the edge of town, Leo and Xavier decompressed with cheap pizza and a bottle of red wine from the gas station. Leo replayed every moment. The way his father's shoulders had slumped when the letter was read, the flicker of doubt in Mia's eyes. I thought coming out would be the hardest part. This feels bigger. Xavier listened, then pulled him close. You've grown so much since we met. Remember that first fight we had about hiding our relationship from your coworkers? You stood up then too. Their night unfolded slowly, conversations weaving between past and present, strengthening the quiet resolve between them. The next morning brought a surprise visit from Uncle Mark, alone this time. He stood awkwardly in the motel lobby, hat in hand. Your grandma. She had a brother once. Never talked about him much. He left when he was young. Similar reasons, I guess. The admission hung between them like a fragile thread. Leo invited him in for coffee, Xavier excusing himself to give them privacy. Mark spoke haltingly about family lore no one had shared. A great uncle who had disappeared to California in the 50s. Rumors of a different life. She never forgot him. Maybe that's why she did this. The conversation cracked open a new understanding, small but real. Yet not everyone was ready. Back at the house for another meeting, Leo's mother pulled him aside in the hallway. If you take that house, you'll be choosing him over us. Is that what you want? The ultimatum stung. Leo searched her face for the mother who had once bandaged his scraped knees. I'm not choosing against you, Mom. I'm choosing truth. Grandma wanted us all to heal. She turned away, but not before he saw tears she quickly wiped. The betrayal of secrets long buried was fracturing them all. Yet Leo felt a strange clarity emerging. Days blurred as lawyers exchanged emails and family texts grew sharper. Leo returned to New York briefly for work, Xavier staying behind to handle details. The separation tested them. Late-night calls replaced shared dinners. Leo pacing the apartment while Xavier described tense family dinners. Your dad asked about my job today. First real question he's ever directed at me. Small victories, but enough to keep hope alive. Leo threw himself into a new campaign at the agency, designing ads that celebrated diversity without realizing how personal the theme had become. Then another shock arrived via certified mail. The will included a codicil. The farmhouse would be held in trust for Leo and Xavier jointly. with a stipulation that the family attend mediation sessions if they wanted any share of the liquid assets. Grandma had anticipated the resistance. Leo read the document twice, heart racing. This was her final gift, not money, but a forced reckoning. He called Xavier immediately. She knew we'd need this. She believed we could fix it. Xavier's voice carried a smile. Then let's prove her right. The mediation loomed like a storm cloud. Leo flew back to Chicago, Xavier meeting him at the airport with a hug that erased the miles. They walked into the lawyer's office hand in hand, ready for whatever came. But as the session began, old wounds reopened in ways neither had expected. His mother arrived alone, his father citing work. Mia brought her husband, who glared openly. The mediator, a calm woman named Dr. Patel, set ground rules, but emotions quickly overrode them. You paraded your relationship in front of a dying woman, his mother accused, voice trembling. Leo countered softly. She asked for it. She wanted to meet the man who makes me happy. Misunderstandings piled like bricks. Assumptions about Xavier's influence, fears of judgment from neighbors, guilt over years of distance. Xavier spoke for the first time, his voice steady. I love your son, not as a phase or a rebellion, as the person he is. The room fell silent for the first time. By the end of the long day, no resolutions had been reached, but seeds were planted. Leo and Xavier drove back to the farmhouse that evening, unlocking the door with the key the lawyer had provided. Inside, the air smelled of lavender and memories. They stood in the kitchen where Grandma had baked pies, and Leo finally let the tears come. Xavier held him through it. We're building something new here, for us, and maybe someday for them too. The turning point felt close, a bridge between past pain and future possibility, but the highest peak of emotion still waited on the horizon. The farmhouse felt alive in a way the city apartment never could. Creaking floors and faded wallpaper whispering stories Leo had almost forgotten. He and Xavier spent the first night exploring room by room, opening drawers filled with old letters and photo albums. In one, they found pictures of Grandma as a young woman, arm linked with a man who looked strikingly like Leo. She never remarried after Grandpa, Leo murmured, tracing the image. Xavier nodded, sensing the layers. Maybe she understood more than anyone realized. Morning brought fresh tension when Mia showed up unannounced, coffee cups in hand as a peace offering. I read the codicil again. Mediation isn't optional if we want the savings account. Her tone was softer than before, but suspicion lingered. They sat on the porch swing, the same one where Leo had confessed his first crush at 13. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. Leo shrugged. I tried. Remember Christmas 3 years ago? You changed the subject. The misunderstanding had festered, turning siblings into strangers. Xavier stayed inside, giving them space, but his presence in the kitchen window was a quiet reminder of support. The second mediation session 2 days later escalated quickly. Leo's father attended this time, his jaw set like stone. This isn't about the money, he said flatly. It's about what kind of example you're setting for Mia's kids. The words landed heavy, exposing the core fear, legacy and reputation in their tight-knit community. Leo felt the old shame rise but pushed it down. My life isn't an example for anyone but me. And Xavier isn't a threat. He's family now. Xavier reached for his hand openly across the table, a simple act that spoke volumes. Dr. Patel guided them through exercises, asking each person to voice one fear. His mother's was raw. Losing the son I raised. Leo's response cracked something open. I never stopped being that son. I just stopped pretending. Tears flowed freely for the first time in years. Yet betrayal surfaced when Mia admitted she had overheard phone calls years ago and told their mother without confronting Leo. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. The revelation stung, but Leo chose forgiveness in the moment. We all made choices out of fear. After the session, Leo and Xavier drove to the pond behind the property, skipping stones like they had as kids. "You're handling this better than I expected," Xavier said, watching ripples spread. Leo smiled faintly. "Grandma's letter gave me permission I didn't know I needed." They talked about the future, keeping the farmhouse as a retreat, perhaps hosting family holidays if bridges could be rebuilt. But Leo knew sacrifices loomed. His job in New York was stable, yet the inheritance meant choices. "What if I quit and we renovate this place together?" Xavier laughed softly. "As long as we're together, I'm in." Back in the city the following week, life resumed with new weight. Leo's agency offered a promotion, but it required more travel, pulling him away from Chicago mediations. Xavier encouraged him to take it, but doubt crept in during late nights. One evening, after a heated argument about priorities, Xavier stood at the window. "I feel like I'm always the one waiting. First your family, now your career." The misunderstanding hit Leo hard. "You're never second. You're the reason I can fight at all." They reconciled with quiet promises, but the crack remained. Family texts continued, a mix of anger and tentative olive branches. His father sent a single message. "Your grandmother was stubborn too." It was the closest thing to approval Leo had received. Yet his mother remained silent, her absence a louder statement. Leo flew back alone for the next session. Xavier needed at the studio for a show. The solo trip tested him. In the lawyer's office, his mother finally spoke her deepest fear. "I worried every day after you left that I'd failed you somehow." The honesty shifted the air. Leo hugged her awkwardly at the end, the first physical contact in months. "You didn't fail. We're still figuring it out." The sacrifice came unexpectedly during the fourth mediation. To keep peace, Leo proposed giving his parents a larger share of liquid assets if they accepted the joint ownership of the farmhouse. "It's not about money for me," he said. "It's about keeping her legacy alive without tearing us apart." His father nodded slowly, the first crack in his armor. Mia cried openly, but his mother hesitated longest. Accepting him means accepting everything. Xavier, joining via video call from New York, spoke directly to her. "I don't need you to accept me. Just stop asking Leo to choose." The session ended with tentative agreements to draft new terms. Driving back to the farmhouse alone that night, Leo felt the weight of growth settling in his chest. He had faced betrayals, offered compromises, and watched relationships strain under truth's light. Xavier arrived the next morning with flowers from a roadside stand. They spent the day clearing overgrown gardens, hands dirty and hearts lighter. "We're building something real here," Xavier said, wiping sweat from his brow. Leo pulled him close under the afternoon sun. "With or without them. But I hope it's with." Yet the true turning point arrived unannounced 2 weeks later. A letter from his mother, handwritten like Grandma's, arrived at the Brooklyn apartment. Inside were pages of memories and one simple line. "I was wrong to forbid you from seeing her. Come home for Thanksgiving. Bring Xavier." The words blurred through sudden tears. Leo called Xavier at the studio, voice breaking. "She said your name." The moment marked the shift they had fought for, but the emotional peak was still climbing toward full acceptance. Thanksgiving arrived with crisp Illinois air and the scent of wood smoke from neighbors' chimneys. Leo and Xavier drove up together, the farmhouse now partially renovated with fresh paint and new curtains they had chosen during weekends. The family gathering felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone knew their lines but no one had rehearsed the ending. His mother opened the door, her smile tentative but real. "You made it." She hugged Leo first, then turned to Xavier with an outstretched hand. "Welcome. Truly." The simple gesture carried months of silent work, mediation after mediation, late-night reflections. Dinner unfolded around the long oak table Grandma had loved. Turkey, stuffing, and pies filled the air with warmth, but conversation remained careful. Mia's kids asked Xavier about his paintings, breaking ice with innocent curiosity. Leo's father carved the bird without comment at first, but midway through the meal he raised his glass. To Evelyn. She knew how to make us see what mattered. Eyes met across the table, and for the first time, no one looked away from Leo and Xavier's linked hands. Yet the evening held one final misunderstanding. When dessert arrived, his mother pulled Leo aside in the kitchen. The will. I fought it because I thought losing the house meant losing her memory. Tears welled as she admitted the fear had blinded her to everything else. Leo listened, then shared his own scars. Nights wondering if love meant exile. They talked until the pie cooled, forgiveness settling like fresh snow. Xavier joined later, and together they described plans for the farmhouse as a family retreat. "We want you all here for holidays," Xavier said simply. His father nodded, gruff but genuine. The real climax came after dinner when they gathered in the living room with old photo albums. Leo opened one to a faded picture of Grandma with her mysterious brother. His mother gasped softly. "She told me once, in confidence. He lived a hidden life. She never wanted that for you." The secret spilled out fully. Letters hidden in the attic, stories of loss and quiet support. The family sat in stunned silence as pieces connected. Betrayal turned to understanding. Mia wiped her eyes. "We almost repeated the same mistake." Leo stood then, voice steady. "Grandma's will didn't just give me a house. It gave us all a chance to choose differently." He recounted every step. The midnight call, the secret visits, the mediations, the sacrifices of pride and comfort. Xavier stood beside him, their shoulders touching. The room filled with quiet affirmations, hugs that lingered longer than before. His father clapped Leo on the back. "Proud of you, son. Both of you." The words, simple and overdue, landed like healing balm. That night in the upstairs bedroom, Leo and Xavier lay awake listening to the house settle. "We did it," Xavier whispered. "Not perfect, but real." Leo turned to him, tracing the line of his jaw. "Because of you. Your patience, your strength." Their embrace held the weight of every trial, every growth moment. Outside, snow began to fall softly, blanketing the farm in quiet promise. The journey had tested them, revealed truths, and forged something unbreakable. But growth demanded one last decision. Back in New York after the holiday, Leo received a job offer to manage the agency's Chicago branch, allowing them to split time between city and farm. He discussed it with Xavier over coffee at their favorite cafe. "It means less travel for us together," Xavier smiled. "And more family dinners. I'm in if you are." The choice crystallized everything. Love wasn't escape anymore. It was building bridges. Family group chats grew active with plans for Christmas. His mother sent recipes, asking Xavier's preferences. Mia shared photos of her kids, drawing pictures for Uncle Xavier. The transformation felt cinematic, like scenes from a film where shadows lifted to reveal light. Leo walked through Central Park one crisp morning, Xavier's hand in his, reflecting on the path from forbidden visits to open acceptance. The psychological scars remained, but they no longer defined him. Yet one final confrontation waited. During a weekend visit, his father pulled Xavier aside in the barn. "I wasn't kind at first. Sorry for that." The apology, raw and male, marked the deepest shift. Xavier accepted it with grace, and they spent the afternoon repairing an old fence together, tools passing silently between them. Leo watched from the porch, heart full. Every action, every decision had led here, to a family no longer fractured by secrets but strengthened by truth. The emotional peak crested during a quiet evening by the fireplace. His mother handed Leo a small box from Grandma's jewelry. Inside was a simple ring engraved with the date of Leo's birth. "She wanted you to have this for the man you choose." Tears flowed freely as Leo slipped it onto Xavier's finger in front of everyone. No grand proposal, just honest commitment witnessed by the people who mattered most. Applause and hugs followed, the room alive with the kind of acceptance Leo had once only dreamed about. Months later, spring painted the farmhouse in greens and wildflowers. Leo and Xavier had officially moved part-time to Chicago, the Brooklyn apartment now a weekend pied-à-terre. The agency branch thrived under Leo's leadership, and Xavier's art studio in the converted barn drew local students eager to learn. Family dinners became routine, laughter replacing awkward silences. His mother baked pies using grandma's recipes, asking Xavier for painting tips to hang in the hallway. His father taught them both to fish at the pond, grumbling good-naturedly about city boys. One sunny afternoon, while planting a new rose garden in honor of Grandma, Leo paused to watch Xavier laugh with Mia's kids over a spilled bag of soil. The scene captured everything they had fought for. Love without hiding, family without conditions. Mia joined Leo, wiping dirt from her hands. "I was wrong about so much. Thank you for not giving up on us." The words closed the last gap. Misunderstandings finally laid to rest. Yet life continued testing them. A distant cousin posted old family photos online, sparking questions in the community. Leo's mother fielded calls with newfound confidence. "My son and his partner are part of this family. Always have been." Her defense marked profound growth, the kind born from facing consequences head-on. Xavier and Leo celebrated quietly that night on the porch, wine glasses raised to the woman who had started it all with her will. As summer approached, they hosted the first big family reunion. Relatives from across the Midwest arrived, some hesitant but all curious. Stories flowed, memories of Grandma, updates on lives, quiet acknowledgments of past hurts. Leo stood to speak before dinner, Xavier at his side. "She didn't just leave us property. She left us a choice to love better." Applause rose, genuine and warm. His father raised a toast, eyes misty. "To new beginnings." The moment crystallized the journey. From midnight bands and shattered trust to shared tables and open hearts. In the quiet after guests left, Leo and Xavier walked the property line hand in hand. Fireflies danced in the fields, mirroring the lights of the city they still loved. "We grew up here," Leo said softly. "Not just me. Us." Xavier pulled him close, their kiss lingering under the stars. The relationship, once tested by secrets and societal whispers, now stood unbreakable, forged in fire and forgiveness. The farmhouse lights glowed behind them as they headed inside, ready for whatever came next. Leo glanced back at the family photos now lining the walls, including new ones of all of them together. Acceptance wasn't a destination but a daily decision, one they chose together every morning. True or false? A single family secret can heal more than it destroys?